We're right back into it. It's video 3. Words, 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 video.
The Roman force, I would bet you like a dollar, maybe $1.10, that it was about 10,000 soldiers.
Okay.
His sources from the time period said it was 100,000. I find that really hard to believe because the Romans were having so much trouble fielding a force. And why would you bring 100,000 men to fight 3,000 men? It seems unlikely. But anyway, the number is probably 10,000, maybe 20,000. It's not 100,000. So the Arabs are deployed, the Muslim Arabs are deployed against Christian Arabs who are fighting for the Romans. And the Romans outnumber them probably 3 or 4 or 5 to 1, maybe 6 to 1, maybe 7 to 1. It's bad. And they fight instead of running away like they should have. And they get the crap beat out of them. And the Muslim Arabs are just in bad trouble, and they keep retreating, they keep retreating. One commander after another dies. Finally, the last commander turns to Khalid ibn Walid and goes, I want you to figure out how to get us out of here. And hands him the banner to put him in command of the Arab army, the Muslim Arab army. And what Khalid ibn Walid does is he'll take soldiers and he'll give them a banner, and he'll have them sneak around a hill at night. So they're behind the hill. And then in the daytime, he'll have them come over the top of the hill. And then when they arrive where the Arab army is, he secretly sneaks them another banner. They sneak around the backside of the hill, and then they'll come over the top of it again. And then he gives them another banner, and then they'll go around the back of the hill, and they'll come over the top. So the Romans watching this are like, man, look at all the reinforcements they're getting. And it was just the same group of guys that just kept marching in a circle around this hill. And then when the sun went down,
something similar was done in the American Civil War when McClellan was a softie. And he approached, and I apologize, I don't remember the Confederate names, but they just kept marching soldiers across. And he just thought, well, look at all those guys, there's too many of them. So he never attacked the city. And then when he did attack, they were all gone because they used that opportunity to get the hell out of there because they were outnumbered. There's also something about that in the Revolutionary War. No, maybe it was the War of 1812. Yeah, maybe War of 1812. I want to say Tecumseh might have been involved. Anyway.
We would have each man set 5, 10 campfires and then try to keep walking around in front of the campfires. So the Romans watching it would not only see a bunch of campfires, they would see all these men walking in front of the campfires. And he just kept doing these tricks. And what it did was it kept the Romans from attacking because the Romans thought, man, I don't know how big that force is. There's so many of them. And he kept doing this until he finally got far enough away from the Roman army he could just tell his men to run, let's run. And they ran. That is the only battle Khalid ibn Walid was in command of where he didn't win. It was the first time he was ever in command, and he was put in command after they had already lost.
I wouldn't say he didn't win. I wouldn't say that because he didn't fight. He was put in charge so late, but what he did succeed at was getting his men out of there, which was the objective. So in that aspect, he did win. He just didn't win on the battlefield, but that's not what he was trying to do. But yeah, he didn't win because he retreated. Okay. I think we're splitting hairs on this one. I understand what he's saying. I disagree slightly because the objective wasn't to fight. But I understand what I'm just rehashing it.
In circumstances that were impossible to win. The Prophet Muhammad will eventually capture Mecca. And when he does, he'll own the western part of Arabia and the very eastern part of Arabia, but not the rest of it. And this is important because Arabia had never, ever, ever, in its entire history up until that moment, been ruled by a single political entity. The Arabians had never ruled Arabia, the Persians had never ruled Arabia, the Ethiopians had never ruled Arabia, The Romans had never ruled Arabia. At one point, the Ethiopians had captured a piece of Arabia, the Yemen. And then, of course, the Persians have that chunk over there in the northeast, and the Romans have that chunk in the northwest. But no one had ever ruled all of Arabia as a single political entity. The closest anybody had come, in fact, was the Prophet Muhammad. When he died in 632, he had gotten such a big chunk, he probably had about 40% of Arabia. He was replaced by a guy named Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr didn't take the title king, he didn't take the title emperor, he took the title follower of the messenger of God and became the ruler of this Muslim-controlled chunk of Arabia. He made two armies. He sent one army from Yathrib due east, and he sent the other army south to Yemen. And his goal is to finally, once and for all, conquer Arabia and rule it. And actually, he was ruling from Mecca at that point. The guy he put in charge of his army that went east was Khalid ibn Walid. And Khalid will do a series of battles against a heretic who is claiming to be the real prophet in an event called the Ridha Wars. And Khalid will win battle after battle after battle. And by 633, Arabia is unified. So the campaign started in 632. It took less than a year. And in part because of Khalid's decisive victories in the center of Arabia. At that point, there's argument amongst historians exactly what happened next. Did Abu Bakr order Khalid to keep going, or did he tell Khalid to stop? It's entirely possible either is true. He doesn't stop. That's the important thing. Whether he was told to stop or told to keep going, he doesn't stop. And he goes towards the very southern tip of Iraq. So see where it says Sabur? He's headed in that direction.
These are just some of the diseases and ailments that nearly 1 billion people are exposed to every single day because they're only one.
He ends up fighting a battle in what is today Kuwait. It's called the Battle of the Chains. The Persian general Hormuz chains up his elite soldiers to show the Arabs that there is no retreat, that the Persians will fight to the death because they've made it so they can't retreat because they're chained together. But also, because Khalid relied heavily on cavalry, it would be impossible to do a cavalry charge through them because there are chains in between them, so there's no way to get through. What Khalid liked to, the way battles went back then, everybody did this, the Persians, the Romans, everybody did this, is they would send champions to go fight each other before the battle. But what the Arabs liked to do was first poetry. So they would get their best improv poet, because they would improv right there. They didn't have a poem written in advance. And they would get that poet to shout to the other army a poem. And the belief was that if you shouted a good enough poem, the other side should give you the field and walk away. And of course the Persians are like, screw you, we don't even speak Arabic, we don't know what you're saying. So after the Arab shouts this poetry at the Persians who are annoyed, Khalid walks out and says, I'm my champion. I'll fight the Persian champion. That's a problem for the Persian general then, because if he doesn't go fight, it's general versus general. If he doesn't make it general versus general, it makes him look like a coward. So the Persian general goes, okay, let me fight. And they go out and they fight, and Khalid ibn Walid kills him within like 30 seconds. It's a really quick fight. And so now the Persians are going to go into the battle without their general. And what Khalid did was he just kept using his cavalry
and just chained together
to do these charges against the Persians that just kept them off balance until finally he broke up their order. And what they should have done was they should have repositioned, or they should have retreated a little bit and then repositioned, but they can't because they're chained together. And he swings his cavalry around the backside and starts harassing them, and he tears them to pieces. The estimate is that he brought 18,000 men against 20,000 Persians, the same Persians who tore those Romans to pieces almost 700 years prior. And he walked away with a couple hundred killed, and the Persians lost and were killed or captured. And then what he's going to do is he's going to work his way along the western bank of the Euphrates River. And his goal is the city that's labeled as Herat there. At the time, it was called Hira, or at least the Arabs called it Hira. And he's heading towards Hira. And he'll fight 3 more battles. The rivers Walid, and I'm drawing Ulais. Walid Ulais in the river. And one of the battles, I don't remember which one, I'm slightly embarrassed, but not really. There's 50 battles, dude. I can't keep all this straight in my head. At one of the battles, one of the Persian generals is like, screw this, because Khalid kept going, I'll be your champion. And he walks out, now the Persian general is stuck doing the same thing. And the first thing that happens in the opening moments of the battle is the Persian general gets killed. And so this Persian general goes, okay, I bet that bastard's going to do this again. So he buried 12 Persian soldiers in the battlefield right where he thought the challenge would take place with straws so they could breathe through it. He buried them in the night so that in the morning they would come out and do the challenge. And then what was supposed to happen is once the challenge started, the 12 Persian soldiers would jump up and they just murder Khalid right there. So,
because that doesn't come across as more cowardly than refusing to fight.
Khalid walks out, the Persian general walks out, the 12 men jump up, and one of Khalid's cousins was in the army, the Muslim Arab army. And he's like, that's not fair. And he runs out and joins Khalid, and the 2 men murder the 13 Persians. And then they destroy the Persian army. And he would use different tactics every time. And one of the battles, what he did was he snuck 2 cavalry units behind a hill, and the Persians were in between his men on the other side of the hill and his army. And he just kept slowly backing his army up and making a circle, a half circle out of it. So the Persians would kind of go into the middle, and then he signaled his cavalry that came riding over the hill, and they attacked the Persians from behind, completely surrounded, destroys them. He captures Hira, and then on the way, so see where it says Peraz Sabur? That is Anbar, the city of Anbar in Iraq today. He's heading towards that place. That's where he wants to go. And he's going to fight 3 battles, one after the other, in succession. And here's what he does. So there were 60,000 Persian soldiers in 3 separate armies, 20,000 each. And they're coming for him. And by this point, he's down to 15,000 men. Because even though he keeps winning, he's still taking losses. So it's going to be 4-to-1 odds if he lets those 3 Persian armies merge together. And he's thinking, I don't think I can beat 60,000 men with 15,000 men. So if I'm going to win, I'm going to have to attack them piecemeal. I'm going to have to hit each of the 3 Persian units before they get together. So he races his army as fast as he can towards the first one. But first, he cuts his army into 3 5,000-man units. And he tells them, we're going to arrive at 2 a.m., and he gives them a date, like 2 weeks in advance. And he says, I need you at this location, at this time, on this day. Go. And they take 3 different paths, and they're going to come at this Persian unit, and he's guessing where he thinks that Persian unit will have arrived to by that point. I challenge you. This is my challenge. 3 of you, you and 2 of your best friends, get into 3 separate cars, and you can use GPS. Pick a spot somewhere on the other side of the US, because it needs to be a long road trip, right? 3 days. I'm not even going to make it 2 weeks, just 3 days. So I don't care where you want to go, Washington or the other Washington. Either way, it'll work out to be about the same. But make the 3 of you take 3 separate paths, and then time it so that you arrive at the exact same moment. Bet you can't do it. Now take away GPS. and navigate at night, trying to guess where you think the enemy army is going to be. They're there when the three armies converge at the exact same moment. They catch the Persians asleep in their camp. They tear them to pieces. He's like, all right, 1 down, 2 to go. He looks at his men and he goes, this is where the Persian army is the next one's going to be. And he tells them, I want you there this day, this time. Go. 3 different ways. And the 3 units charge as fast as they can. And they get there. And the Persian army is there. And he destroys that one too. And then he tells his men, all right, we got 1 more. 1 more. And go. And they arrive at the right time, on the right day, in the spot where the Persians were at night. And they wiped out the third 20,000 man unit with almost no losses. They dispatched 60,000 men in a maneuver that I bet a contemporary military force would never be able to execute, let alone 3 times in a row. Insane. It shouldn't be doable. He gets to where it says Dura.
Hi, my name is Alexa, and I would like to give you a few reasons why you should consider dating a young Asian lady. You can choose a potential spouse from Vietnam, the Philippines, India.
That's the city of Firaz. Firaz was the border between the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. The Persians and the Romans hated each other's guts. They had been fighting each other 628 plus 52, right? It was 53 BC, the Battle of Karhae, but there's no year 0, so you have to subtract 1. That's why I'm doing 52. So what is 28 plus 52? 80. For 680 years, the Romans and the Persians had been fighting each other.
That's not very long.
Can you comprehend 680 years of warfare? Like, I don't even know what that means. What does that even mean? By the time Khalid ibn Walid gets to Firaz, the Persians and the Romans looked at each other and went, you are no longer the enemy. We have a new enemy. I don't know where these guys even came from. Because you have to remember, at this point in time, the Persians had been an empire for 1,200 years. And the Romans had officially been an empire, calling themselves an empire, for 600 years, but they had been imperial for the 300 before that. Because even before Rome was an empire, it owned Spain, it owned North Africa, it owned Syria, it owned Turkey, it owned Greece, right? And so you have 900 years of imperial history for the Romans and 1,200 years of imperial history for the Persians. There's 21 centuries between those two empires. And they're also technologically the most advanced civilizations on Earth. And they had massive populations compared to the Arabs. They're down because of malaria, but the Arabs don't have any rivers. They don't have the agricultural capacity to support large populations. The Arabs are outnumbered, they're out-technologied, they're out-moneyed, they're out-experienced, they're out-equipped.
Yeah.
And Khalid, in 1 year, has captured Iraq. Our military was there for 8 years. We didn't capture anything. We captured IEDs in the face.
I'm going to pause it there. And we are 3 parts in. We're going to finish up with the final 2 parts. 2,100 years of empire between two enemies. That's just... It's just crazy. That'll never happen again. All right, well, I'm going to end this here, and I'm going to jump right back into them, because this has been really good. Okay, I'm going to end it here. Like and subscribe. Or that gnat that keeps flying around, I'm going to have him come to your house and just annoy the shit out of you.